Happy Saturday, friends. It's me, Dr. Christina Hibbert. We are on day 6 of our challenge, and I am still coming live to you every day. We've still got a couple more days left. Today, we're going to talk about day 6, nurture. And this is a really important topic. In fact, I have to tell you that I have been trying to nurture myself too, and I have had to really check myself to see if I even understand what nurture really is, what it really means, what we really need to do to practice self-nurture. And I've really come to see how much of a block it is for so many of us, because so many of us just, we're so good at nurturing all these other people around us, but when it comes to ourselves, we really have a block. And we're going to talk about that today. We're also going to talk about 3 ways to actually practice self-nurture, and actually there's specific strategies that you can use. So hopefully these are helpful for you. If you haven't already, go back and watch our other days of the videos. If you didn't do them on the days you were supposed to, it doesn't matter. The challenge is here for you to do whenever you want. And we've already talked about really important things like how to recharge, how to energize ourselves, how do we find more love and play and joy in our lives. And today we talk about that really important element of self-care, which is called nurture. Now, when it comes to nurture, I think most of us just don't even know what that means. Okay, so there's a couple different ways we can define that if we think about it. And when we talk about nurture, immediately my mind goes to psychology and the whole nature versus nurture debate, right? So there's this whole debate about like, where do we get our traits and how we turn out and all that? Is it more of the nature, like our biology, or is it more of the nurture, like our environment, right? And the truth is it's both, but nurture really can mean that environment that we are put ourselves in, that we grow up in, and that we create for ourselves now, but it doesn't just mean that. Okay, so that's like the psychology definition, which is one part of it, and it is an important part. We are going to talk about environment and the role that it plays in our nurture. But the second most important definition for us today is that nurture really must be defined as and I looked it up, this is a good one, to care for and encourage the growth or development of. So if we're thinking about nurture, the definition is to care for or encourage the growth or development of. And what we're talking about today is to care for or nurture or to strengthen or encourage the growth or development of, that's right, you. Because really we are the only ones that can ultimately care for ourselves and nurture ourselves. Yes, we might have been nurtured by parents or friends or family. Maybe we still are in some ways. Obviously, hopefully we still are if we have that love in our life. But when we are not practicing self-nurture, we're really going to be struggling. And that's where the stress really comes in. That's where we get burned out. That's where we are really not practicing. I mean, ultimately, we really aren't practicing self-care if we're not practicing self-nurture. So how can we care for and encourage the growth or development of ourselves? That's what we're going to focus on today. And I have to tell you, as I was getting ready for this, and hi Laura, as I was getting ready for this, I actually went to my bar exercise class this morning, and it was so sweaty. I sweat so much that I came back and I had just like 15 minutes to change. And in fact, I'm going to show you. Okay, this is reality, people. My hair's up because you can see, like, this is all just wet right there. Isn't that gross? Sweat. So, means I worked out hard, which is good, but it also means I need a shower. And I haven't had one yet. But as I was getting dressed and trying to kind of make myself look presentable after such a sweaty workout, I was putting on like normal clothes and jeans, and then I was thinking about my day, and I was like, okay, it's Saturday, and Saturday, yes, I have some things I need to work on, mostly here at home in my office, and I have a basketball game I need to go to later, but I want to relax. Like, I need some chill time. So I took off all my regular clothes, and I put on my little sweatsuit, okay? See? And I got my slippers on, just to prove it. And, like, let's be honest here, I always have slippers on when I'm making these videos, okay? I just kind of always do, because I'm always at home, and when I'm at home, I'm in slippers if it's winter. So there you go. That is part of self-nurture. is saying, you know what, I want to be comfortable. I don't want to have to, you know, get all dressed up and, you know, make myself look presentable for a video. You know, I just want to be me. I just want to get out there and kind of like live and be who I am, right? That's what this is all about. And it can be that simple, okay? So we can start by just thinking about, and here's a question of the day, what is the loving thing to do? Now, I know I've mentioned this a couple times. It was in the article that I wrote on my blog about this challenge, that question of what is the loving thing to do. But here's how that came to be. Here's how I came to that question for myself. Yeah, several years ago, and again, I always go back to this time because it was just the most significant event of my life. But this was probably about 2 years after my sister and brother-in-law had died, and suddenly we inherited our nephews. I gave birth. We suddenly went from 3 to 6 kids. So it was right around that time, and I had been trying everything to nurture myself. You know, I was in therapy. I was trying to take care of my body. I was trying to do all the things I know I needed to do, trying to get sleep. But of course, I had a newborn and 5 other kids, and it just wasn't working. And I remember I was like also trying to deal with, in my therapy, a lot of anger that I had. And we women especially do not like anger. It makes us very uncomfortable. We don't like feeling angry, and I understand that. That's totally how I am. And in my regular therapy, we had been touching on that, and he had kind of pulled out with me that, you know, you have all this anger because my sister did die of an overdose in her bed. And, you know, when there's a suicide, even if it's, you know, an accidental overdose, even if it wasn't intentional, it's still like she died by her own hand and literally left me everything, and left me all of her problems and everything that I had to deal with. And so, yeah, I had a lot of anger, and I felt so guilty because I had all this anger, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I didn't want to feel angry toward her, but I did. It's like I wouldn't think about her. I wouldn't, you know, I would kind of block her out because I was so angry. And at some point I met a woman. I think I was teaching a seminar, and I met a woman who came up to me afterwards, and she was so sweet. And she was like, okay, you know, you just need a big hug. And she gave me a big hug, which was very nurturing. And then she said, you know, I have dealt with a lot of, you know, people in my work who are dealing with a lot of anger, and who have dealt with, you know, the loss of loved ones and suicide and things like that. And my practice is focused on anger. I'm actually like an anger therapist, which I've never heard of that before. And, you know, if you ever need to come to me, just let me know. And so as I'm like going through life and kind of like trying to deal with things, eventually I decided, okay, I'm going to go to her. So I went to her, and as we were doing this anger therapy, that was the main point I took away. And I only went to, I think, even 1 session with her, or 2 maybe, because really I was working in my other therapy. And yes, I need therapy too, for sure. We all do. But the question that came out was, you know, what is the loving thing to do versus what is the right thing to do? Now, I'm a very right thing to do kind of person. I want to do what's right. You know, I want to serve and help and love, and I want to grow, and I want to be the best I can be. But it's so easy, and you tell me if you can relate to this, because I know this is so true for me. It's so easy for us to get caught up in our own, like, spiraling in our brains about what is right. Because then we start to go, well, but I'm tired, and I should, you know, I should sleep, but I really also should do my work, and I can't get my work done, and so I don't know what I should do, and what's the right thing? And so we get caught up in this like right thing, like, we get stuck, we get paralyzed to where we don't know what to do, because they're both good things. But what is the loving thing? That's a whole different question, and that's what nurture is all about. So sometimes the right thing is the loving thing, and sometimes there's 2 right things, and you have to pick the more loving thing. So even that works even with parenting. Think about it with kids, like, what is the loving thing to do for them? You know, my kids had an activity early this morning. They did not want to get up. They're teenagers, you know, and the 3 that are home didn't want to get up and didn't want to go early to this activity, and it was a service project. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, I get why they're tired. I'm tired too. I don't want to get them up that early. But what is the loving thing to do? Well, that's a good question. Like, is the loving thing to let them sleep in because they're tired? Or is the loving thing to make them get up and go do service for somebody else because I know how they're going to feel when they're done. They're going to feel good and it's good for their character development. So yes, that's what I did, right? That's the loving thing. So that's number one. Ask yourself, what is the loving thing to do? And let me tell you right now, if there's any doubt in our minds about why we struggle with self-nurture ever, let me just tell you, let me clear that up right now. It's because of you. Okay? Not to lay a guilt trip, but it's because of you and it's because of me, for me, because we are the ones who prevent our self-nurture. We are the only ones who can prevent it because we are the gatekeepers to self-nurture. Okay? We are the only ones that can prevent that from happening. And even if our nurture includes our environment, which it does, and we'll talk about that in a moment, and other people, we are the gate for that. We are the one that decides if we're going to let other people help us or not, or if we're going to say, no, I'm good, and just kind of like let it go. We are the ones who decide how much we'll let that love in. We are the ones who decide how much we're going to, or what we're going to do in our environment, what we allow around us, what we allow to distract us from the things that nurture our soul. Right? It's so important that we get this lesson, that we are the gatekeepers to self-nurture. And if we don't open the gate to the right things and let the right things in and close the gate to the wrong things and block those out and keep them away from us, we're not gonna be nurtured. You know, we're not gonna feel well. We're not gonna reach our potential, that next level of personal growth, that definition of nurture. We will not be caring for and encouraging the growth and development of ourselves. That's what nurture is. So true. Yes, Melissa, thank you. Right? Okay, so we have to be the gatekeepers. And as we talked about with those two definitions at the beginning, the one is our environment, and the second is really what I would call our internal dialogue. Okay, so first remember, what is the loving thing to do? Second, remember that we need to ask that question, am I preventing self-nurture? Remember that we are the gatekeepers. Third, let's talk a little bit about our environment, and then we're gonna talk finally about our internal dialogue. So environment, when it comes to environment, again, that whole psychology, nature versus nurture thing, nurture has a lot to do with how we feel and how we are in this world. And we can't neglect it, we can't forget it. And I know there are gonna be some of you watching this who've had really hard childhoods or who've been through major traumas, who have had to really work to overcome some huge challenges in your life. And I got a question about this the other day and I wanted to address it when we were talking about love. One of the questions from one of the participants was, how do I do this? How do I let love in and let myself play, and kind of all the things we're talking about this week, when I've been abused in the past? You know, how do I deal with that? And that is part of our environment. That's part of our nurture or lack thereof that we received growing up. And it does impact. It impacts how we feel about ourselves. It can definitely impact who we are and who we become and how we treat ourselves. Because when other people treat us badly, and we sort of, I'll say allow it, as when we're older, when we're children, you don't allow it. I mean, that's just, you know, but sometimes we do allow poor behavior as adults even, right? But when we take care of ourselves and protect ourselves, we're gonna feel so much better about ourselves. And then, you know, for those that have had these things in the past when you were young and you couldn't protect yourself and you couldn't defend yourself, that's really hard. And it makes you sometimes grow up thinking, okay, I'm not worth taking care of, right? So for any of you out there, I just wanna say you are worth it. And don't believe the lie that somebody else put in your head so many years ago. And part of the environment now that you're an adult, that we're adults, is to make sure we set up an environment that is safe and that is nurturing for ourselves. So what does that look like for you? And then we'll talk about the internal dialogue, especially for those of you who've been through this kind of trauma in the past. But what kind of environment have you set up for yourself to nurture yourself? Okay, that's a great question. What in your environment nurtures you? Maybe you have, like this past year, I really kind of created this new identity for myself. I went from feeling like I'm a helper, I'm a mom and I'm a helper, which was good. I help everybody, that's what I do, I help people. But I kind of, I knew I was ready to step it up, and I've created this new, like, I'm a light, I'm a role model, I'm an example, I'm a thought leader. That's what I'm trying to do here. This is what I'm doing, right? And I can lead and help people and serve people in such a bigger way when I believe that, right? So in my environment, I set up my office here, this is my home office, to be something that feels nurturing to me. So yes, we can literally decorate and set things up in our home to feel more nurturing. How about the cleanliness of our home? Maybe that feels nurturing or not, right? The people around us that we let into our lives. I mean, obviously, if you have a family that you live with, you can't quite kick them out, but hopefully you can try to take the nurture from them and teach them how to be nurturing of you as well as themselves and each other. And the people that are outside of our home, the people that we interact with all the time. And that's another thing that I did this year to sort of level up my game, was putting myself around people that challenge me and that are ahead of me in my career, that are ahead of me in what I would say personal growth, that know things I don't know, that I admire, that I look up to, and working with them and being around them. And it's been awesome to do that. So that's a question for you. Like, the people that you hang out with most, there's a saying that we become a compilation of the top 5 people that we hang out with the most. So I'm like, oh great, I'm gonna be like my husband and my kids. But they're pretty good. They're pretty good, but they're young, and my husband acts like he's young, so there you go. So what is in your environment? Assessment is first when we're talking about environment. What in your environment might need some change? And here's some questions for you. What nurtures who? Let's change that. Who and what nurtures you? Your soul. Who and what nurtures your soul? You know what I'm talking about, because there are people that when you're around them, you're just like, oh my gosh, I love being around them. They make me feel so good about myself. And we just click, right? We just get each other. And then there are other people where you're around them and you're just like, oh my gosh, they're such a drain. They totally pull me down, right? So who nurtures your soul and what nurtures your soul? Here are some basic questions that you can ask yourself. And you can just kind of jot some of these down and make a note. I did this, it's from a book I've been reading, and you can just make a note. And then you can make a list based on these questions. So some of the questions, like as far as music, what songs lift you up? What kind of music lifts you up? What kind of ideas nurture you that you like to think about or work on? What kinds of experiences rejuvenate you? I love to travel and explore. When I go somewhere new, I just love to get out and walk around and see stuff, or go somewhere brand new and kind of go explore. So like that rejuvenates me. What people encourage you and nurture you? Okay, and I would say on the flip side, what people do not. Okay, make a list of that. What kind of activities revive your spirits that you love doing? Okay, even though I showed you my wet, gross, sweaty bar hair, I love going to bar because it really does, pushes me, and I get to meet people, and it's fun, it rejuvenates me. What spiritual experiences strengthen your soul? What do you need spiritually to nurture you? How about what hopes and dreams inspire you? The whole reason why I changed this whole identity of myself this year was all based on the fact that I had these new dreams that I finally got in touch with. It took a long time to finally get in touch. I kept saying I need a new dream, and finally I got it. And that inspires me, and that nurtures me as I'm working toward it. What about family members? Which family members care for you and nurture you, and which ones don't so much? And sometimes we can, like I said, kind of not be around the ones that don't nurture us, but also sometimes we have to be around them, so we might just try to help them do better. What blessings activate you as far as your giftedness or your talents? What kinds of gifts do you have that really, really gets you going? I love that. I love thinking about our gifts and talents. What recollections or memories really nurture your spirit and that you think about, and it helps you? And I know a lot of you out there have experienced a lot of loss, and I have too. And it's really nurturing at times to be able to, give yourself that permission to focus on the really great memories that you have and just have that time to sort of like love that person through memories. And sometimes you'll see that it's not nurturing when we kind of get stuck there. So that question of like, is this nurturing my spirit right now as far as memories is really helpful. And then books and, you know, other things that you read or you watch or videos, what challenges you and what changes you and what helps you to grow. Okay. So those are a lot of questions that you can ask yourself, and you can even add to those. I know there are other areas of life that I didn't, you know, touch on here that we can all focus on, but basically the question is, what nurtures your spirit, your soul, your body, your emotions, your mind, and your relationships? Okay, what nurtures you? And that's all part of our environment. And now that we're adults, we can choose, and I know it's not always easy, I'm not saying that, but we can choose the environment and the people and the things that we have around us, okay? Now, our last part here is to assess our inner dialogue. Okay, so we were just assessing our environment and what kind of things out here bring more nurturing to our spirit, but what about our inner dialogue? Is your inner dialogue self-nurturing? Good question, right? Is your inner dialogue self-nurturing or not? And if it's not, what would you describe it as? What would you say your inner dialogue is if it's not self-nurturing? And then we can work toward making it more self-nurturing. So self-nurturing dialogue to me is consistently gentle and loving dialogue. Again, it's that what's the loving thing to do? What's the loving thing to think? What's the loving thing to tell myself right now? What's a loving thing to do or to think about, to focus on, to say, any of those things, okay? Is your dialogue self-nurturing? And if it's not, then what changes need to be made? So again, if we prevent our self-nurture, think about it, so much of it is just about our internal dialogue. So much of it is just that message we tell ourselves in our head that, you know, I'm afraid, or people won't get it if I try this, or if I take time away, I feel guilty. I was just finally, see, this is how much I needed this Replenish challenge. Finally this morning, because I tried like 3 other times, I was doing my first of the year journal entry, which I do every year, usually on January 1st, but it's January 12th, and it took me that long. And I go back and I read through the journal that I had the previous year at the same time to see kind of like where I've come from. And one thing that I noticed was at that time, I felt kind of like I've been feeling now, right? I've been feeling a little burned out after the holidays, but not too bad. Last year, I felt very burned out after the holidays. I had no energy. And one thing I noticed was that I was telling myself I needed a break, but that I realized and I recognized that I felt guilty. And so I didn't feel like I deserved it, you know? And finally, my husband literally forced me out the door because my mother-in-law has a house in California that was empty and I could go and use it for a few days. And he forced me out, and I felt like sick to my stomach, guilty the first day or two, which is so ridiculous because I was there to be nurtured, you know, and it was so good for me. I so needed it. And yet we prevent it by our inner dialogue. So if your inner dialogue is the problem, and it is, I'm sure it is, first of all, assess it. So stop and go, okay, what kinds of things am I telling myself about self-nurture? What kind of beliefs do I have that I'm letting stick around, like that we should feel guilty, or that we're not worth it, or that you know, it's not important, whatever we might have. And then just like our environment, once we assess it and ask those questions and find the faults, then the ultimate answer is to make the change. And as a guide for how to make the change is that first question we started with. What is the loving thing to do? Okay? Not so much what is the right thing, although the loving thing is going to probably be the right thing if you're really tuned in and listening and being guided by those whispers, you know? What is the loving thing to do for me, for my child, for my spouse, for my friend, for my work, for my service to others? What is the loving thing to do? And most of the time, it's going to be the hard thing. And self-nurture is hard. It's tough, but it's worth it. It's so, so worth it. And again, only we can prevent our self-nurture. So we have to be willing to not only open the gate for the good stuff and close the gate to the bad stuff, but to begin to do the work of nurture, which is to care for and encourage our own growth and development. That is the definition of nurture. and what hopefully we're going to be doing as we continue to practice it. So for today, ask yourself those questions I listed off earlier. Take some time and just write some answers. Give yourself a little space to just take care of yourself. Get in your comfy clothes like I did. Whatever you need to do, you know, like take care of yourself. Take a bath. Whatever nurtures your spirit and soul. Listen to your favorite music. Go out with a friend. Spend time alone. Whatever you need. Do just a little bit of that today. And really, it has to only be even just like 5 to 10 minutes is still something, and it adds up. But take the time that you can and make the time if you don't have the time. Even if you have to force it to happen, just do it. Nurture yourselves, people, because we are the only ones who are gonna do it. And that's the sad truth that we all need to hear, is that we are the only ones that can do self-nurture because we're ourselves. So we can't expect others to make up for what only we can do, okay? All right, you guys, get out there and nurture yourselves today. And tomorrow, it's our second to last day. We're gonna be talking about inspiration, how to inspire ourselves, because it seems easy to sometimes get inspired by others, but what about inspiring ourselves, and how do we do that? And then Monday will be our last day of the challenge, which we will focus on sharing ourselves then, now that we're all replenished. And I'm gonna be announcing and unveiling my brand new program, Grow Monthly. I am so excited for it. We are so close to getting it all ready. Monday's our launch day. For those who have been, working with me so far, who have been part of our challenge, for those on my email list, you're gonna get first access to my monthly membership site, Grow Monthly. Grasp the repeating opportunities for wisdom. I can't wait. I've been recording videos and getting it all ready to go for you. And it's a way that we can interact live every month, and that I can help you and serve you, and you can help and serve me, and we can work together for our own growth and development as we nurture ourselves a little bit better. So watch for that on Monday too. And I hopefully will see you tomorrow, Monday. Get out there and nurture yourselves today, everybody, and replenish. Doesn't it feel good to say that word? I love it. Okay, we will see you all later.